Rick, I'm going to have you walk through the history of the school board communication process and figure out our next steps.
Sounds good. So Maggie, I don't know if you can pull that up if you're okay with me. Speaking from here, that would be great. And yeah, and so if you're okay clicking Maggie as we go, I might multi-screen if that's okay. So what's up there would be what's on my screen as well. So just some background, and board members, I shared this with you via email last week. We also discussed at our committee meetings this past week as well, so thanks for your attention to this. Summer, and just background, I think, for to review and make sure everybody's in the same starting spot. So summer of 2021 saw a significantly greater number of attendees at board meetings, with much of the attendee concerns around COVID protocols and practices. Public comment increased significantly during the delegations and individuals portion of the meeting, with most of the comments being related to COVID protocols. Some attendees expressed frustration and lack of response from the board. I think we've heard that over the past number of months. Attendees shared ideas. I know particularly about website transparency, and had a chance to work with one community member, parent, around that. Improved communication around COVID dollars, which as we had proceeded and Trevor talked about our HVAC project, we did garner or solicit feedback from parents, staff, and students regarding those COVID dollars, and appreciate Trevor's work to continue to share that as we go forward, and we have that up on our website as well. We started board connection sessions in August and did that through the first couple months of the school year as well. October, November, numerous speakers included individual comments. Occasionally, we did have comments directed at individual board members. December, we again had speakers with comments directed at individual board members. January, we then paused on public comment at our organizational meeting, and at board meetings, and receiving public comment via email for the months of January and February. And the emails have a response from the board published on our website, so we did that both in January, and now we will again here in the next couple days for February. Appreciated some of the review and reflection around policy. So whether it's policy 203.1, 203.2, 206 really is the meat, I would say, of this dialogue and conversation. And then 207 talks a little bit about public hearings, but tends to focus on the special situation, and guidance around expectations of participants. Provided some research, and would say thanks to Maggie as she and I sort of tried to comb the state about different options and opportunities. So Maggie, thanks for your help with this as well. A number of districts continued with what has been the practice or traditional practice here in Alexandria, and you can see some of those listed, and some of those are comparable 14. Others have shifted either recently or in the last 6 months, with listening sessions prior to the board meetings, or via email as well. So you can see a couple of those districts listed there. Ways for people to connect with the board. So I think important for people to know, whether that's via phone, via email, in-person meetings, via public comment, currently via email, student connections. I know we have a group of board members that meet with students at different points of the year. Board connections as well. Again, we had that format this fall. Other ways for parents, community, staff, students to interact and provide feedback for the schools. Appreciated Dana's presentation here about how we use survey data effectively, and how does that help drive us, and so you saw that work at Voyager Elementary here today. Communication with district staff, school staff, and as I talked, I think a little bit last week with board members in some of our committee meetings, also trying to follow chain of command, right? We try to solve the problems at the source of the challenge. And so if that's a parent with a concern around third grade space camp, for example, we'd ask for that parent to reach out to that teacher. And if that can't get resolved in an appropriate fashion, then we go, involve the principal and so forth. And I think that has and continues to serve the district well as we've navigated, some of that experience. And that's part of it too. I think in the totality of the experience, we've got conferences coming up right in a couple weeks, or registration. I'm gonna try to pick an academy for a 9th grader, and we'll do 8th grade registration. I think we just got the note from Discovery Middle School around registration. Parent conference is coming up. You know, so as I watch this as a parent, not only as a superintendent, but as a staff member, as a parent, those opportunities to interact with our staff and provide feedback, both positive and negative, right? Things that we're doing well, and things where we need to grow. So next steps, and options at this time, and things that we discussed, I think, either at committee meetings and had some options on the table, even as we look to research. So public comment accepted via email with a response published on the website. We've had 2 each in the past month. That sounds right, Maggie, I think, or did we have 3 maybe last month? 3 last month and 2 this month. And again, those are located on our website as well for people to see and share. Our board connections model, so 30 minutes prior to the board meeting with 2 board members and the superintendent to listen 1 speaker at a time for 3 minutes max, just to create that space for that individual dialogue. And then public comment at the beginning of the meeting, like December 2021 and months prior. So those are options that I think, again, we saw that as we researched around the state. And one of the pieces that as I reflect on this and think about the importance of story. And I think we heard Teresa tonight talk a little bit about her experience in the beading class and some of the stories there. I do think data is important. Alan, you referenced the data around reading that Michelle had shared. Data is important as well. So whether it's quantitative data, for example, from surveys, or academic data, to the importance of story around a student's experience or a parent's experience, a staff experience, I would say there's an and in there, and that it's not an or. That both of those are valuable. In my someday, not today or tomorrow, I'd love to finish a doctorate in educational leadership, and I'm been on pause for quite some time, really since we moved to Alexandria. And so someday would love to finish that. And some of my work and learning around that is around the value of both quantitative data and qualitative data. And the qualitative data being the story part. And that behind numbers and data, again, is a story. And so as we go to the next slide, I guess, Maggie, I would welcome, and again, I think part of the job of administration, and you've seen that throughout the night when we've had action items, the administration is making a recommendation. And so my recommendation is that we have an and, that we create space for the story to be told via that 30 minutes prior to the board meeting that has, I think, a real personal connection, and that we continue with email. I think as I reached out to one of our members last month who shared a public comment via email, and I just said, what do you think of the response, or how'd that feel? And they appreciated the response, and I think that's helpful from a board standpoint and from a community standpoint. So I would affirm the work of the board in providing a response to concerns. I do think that's an important step. And so as I think about the next steps for the board, that we try to figure out an and, I guess, versus an or solution. And in the end, know that as superintendent, I'm happy to support whatever that final decision is. But I just appreciate everybody's engagement and dialogue around this complex issue, an important issue. So I'll pause there and welcome other thoughts.
Well, I appreciate your comments about the story and the data. I had never quite looked at it in that fashion before. And I think what you're recommending will facilitate both of those. And I think it's important that we hear that story as well as the data. And so I think to continue with email and have the opportunity for a presentation one-on-one or one person at a time to a group of us board persons and the superintendent, I think will facilitate both parts of that equation.
Quick question, Rick. If we were to follow this recommendation, how would we then bring back the information to the full board to share what the questions or concerns were?
Yeah, so a couple of different options. One, we could have it be a part of board reports at the end of that board meeting that night. So that would be one way to do it. Again, I think there's likely other ways to do it, but that would be my initial recommendation. Because the story, if you will, Alan, will be fresh, and we will have assignments of the board members that are present, and would ask for board members to share that experience. The other piece that we've added, I think, from a transparency standpoint is the ability to live stream, right? So we have people now watching. We're going to archive meetings on our website. Last month's is archived. This month will be archived going forward. And I do think that's another important tool in today's era, that we continue to be able to refocus on those areas of concern that were shared. And again, I think over the summer and even through the fall, the passion behind the COVID protocols, I believe that's true. That was true and continues to be true. And that's not a bad thing. That's okay. That's part of the story and part of our community story. And so how might we continue to gather that story? I also loved what Dana said about introverts and extroverts. So all of those personalities exist in our community. And for people to be able to share their thoughts in writing with the board, that is some people's shared style. To be able to come and tell the story in person, that is another person's shared story. And again, I would promote an and solution, whatever that looks like going forward.
Just to qualify what you're saying here, my understanding then would be we would meet from 6:15 to 6:45, and you'd have alternate board members at that. And then would we revise it in a summary at the end, or you think, because I think you need a little time to understand that story.
So much like Michelle talked about a framework or a proposal for summer school, I want to be careful of not filling all the details as board members here. No offense to my thinking, but your thinking can definitely make improvements on this opportunity. So, and Michelle and I, we've had a chance to get to know each other. I would say I tend to be a live thinker and pretty quick on my thinking, good or bad, right or wrong. And Michelle, if you get to know Michelle, you know she's super thoughtful and will take time and pause and think. And those styles help to balance and contribute, I think, to a good school district. And that might also be true for us as board, or for you as board members as well. That we have different styles and different approaches, and not that either's right or wrong or good or bad, but I think those are good things to be considering as we look at the next couple months for sure.
Quick question. Would we be live streaming the public comment?
Those would not be live streamed, no.
Of course not. They don't like comments to be heard.
So,
But an interesting idea, Sam.
just to help clarify it again so the 6:15 to 6:45 time frame, that would be at least 2 board members. There could be 3 actually there, correct?
Could be, yep. So legally, yes, yep.
Okay. And what you're saying, I think I heard you say, and I think with your comment, response back to Dave, I think you maybe affirmed to some extent. During our board reports at the end of the meeting, those 2 or 3 board members that were in attendance from 6:15 to 6:45 would give all of us a recap of the questions that were raised or the comments that were made. But there wouldn't be the expectation that at that very moment there would be a response. You would craft a response a day or 2 later, and as board persons, just like we did last month, we would have an opportunity on Tuesday, Wednesday morning to share with you our input, our part of the response perhaps.
Correct, which you did successfully last month. Thank you.
I'll just share that we've been talking about this through our curriculum meeting and some conversations
in the sense of public comment's very important. It's important that people are heard in the way that's best, but how do we create a healthy environment and have both? And I took that in a deep process of what is right, what's the right decision or best, keeping both in mind. And so in going back through the policies that Rick referred to, especially in policy 206, and how do we make sure that our decision going forward honors both, but also follows our policies, that we as a board respect that it's important that we have public comment, that they're heard. It's important that we can have it be a healthy place for our board members, you know, to their guidelines that are expected in public comment. And so I found myself not able to agree based on our policies with having no public comment where we're currently at. And so I do think that this recommendation upholds what we've laid out, or what is laid out in our 206 policy, and create some space for healthy voices to be heard. And what I'm kind of wondering is if maybe we could have another, hey, you'll review this in 3 months, or some type of projected timeline for us to come back to this, because we might not want this to be a long-term decision. And then another thought is if a person were to make a public comment in that time that's related to an item on our agenda, that would be maybe shared by a board member prior to our voting on that item.
I think both of those thoughts are good. One is to, and again, we tried this with Board Connections. We tried, you know, I would say that we're learning as a board, and that's a good thing. Says it up on the wall. So I would echo that we try this for 2 or 3 months and then come back to it again and see how we're doing, get some feedback. I think that's been helpful. Yeah, I think that would be good. I also, those of you that don't know Angie knows that so she's been on the curriculum policy for quite some time. And Maureen, it was exciting to see you dig into policy a little bit, so thank you. So we've got 2 people on our curriculum policy, and Dean's been around long enough, so knows all the policies, probably helped write all the policies, so fun to have both of you dig into policy the way that you did in this conversation, so appreciate that from both of you. Yeah, I think that trying that for a short amount of time, and whether that's April, May, June, or, sorry, March, April, May, and then come back and revisit and see how we're doing. Those are good check-ins and pauses, I think.
Yeah, one thing that I shared at our January 3rd meeting is that I didn't like the idea that we wouldn't have our full board present for public comment. I still hold that view. I think it's valuable for all of us to hear it firsthand, but I think this is a good decision that potentially we can all, you know, move forward with for the time being.
I would move then that we would proceed for 3 months with this new model to enhance the communication process. And I won't read it verbatim what's up on the screen, but we're gonna have the 6:15 to 6:45 time frame. 2 or more, well, three board members or less.
No more than 3.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. We'll craft the wording accordingly to make sure we're in compliance. So, yeah.
And we will hear then a report at the end of the meeting from those board persons that attended. And you as a superintendent will be tasked with crafting our combined response to that Wednesday following our Monday night's meetings. So I would offer all of that as a motion.
Thank you, Ellen. Do I have a second to his motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Pam. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. And opposed? Motion carries.
Angie, let me interrupt.
Oh, please, yes, please.
I want to take the liberty of interrupting the chair. About 3 months ago, I became aware of a book entitled Love Your Enemies. And I started reading it, and then my life got a little complicated. My wife had some things that I had to help her with. And so I didn't get back to finish reading it till about 2 weeks ago. And I think the book speaks a loud and clear about some of the things that we're all dealing with in our society right now and in this community as well, perhaps. And so I didn't get to go to the school board convention in January because I was taking care of my wife. So the money that I would have spent attending that convention, I have invested in 50 copies of the book. And I'm making them available tonight. They're in the hallway. So when you leave, I invite you to take a copy for each family or each household. There's a paper, there's actually a number of these papers beyond, there's probably 100 of these and only 50 books. But this page is really a summary of the book. And it brings out the 5 points that the author builds on in the book. And the author is Arthur Brooks. He's been for 10 years the president of the American Enterprise Institute based in Washington, D.C. And the book really spoke to me, and I think it will speak to all of those of us that take a chance or take time to read it. So help yourself to a book on the way out, one per family, one per house. And if you get done reading it and want to share it with somebody, you certainly can do that. And if we don't have enough books, I think I still have a little bit of money left in my school board training budget. And I don't plan on being able to attend any other sessions this year. So if we need to, we'll have some more books here next month. So sorry, Angie, for interrupting.
No, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate your looking into that book and bringing it forward to our community. Like I started it this weekend. Didn't get very far into it, I gotta say, but I think it's going to be a very good read. So I encourage you to pick up a
It's an
copy.
interesting book to read.
Yep.
I have one more action item.
Yes.
So we had a typo in our board calendar